Okay, so that is our first sentence. My friend who likes swimming loves the new swimming pool. Again, the independent clause is my friend loves the new swimming pool. The dependent clause or the relative clause is who likes swimming. A group of words, subject, verb. It's giving us more information about this noun, so it's acting like an adjective, answering the question, which friend? We put this right after the noun that it's talking about. So my friend who likes swimming loves the new swimming pool. Independent clause, relative clause. Subject, verb of the independent clause, subject, verb of the relative clause. Okay, we are going to move now to a different sentence. This sentence says, my friend Lisa loves the new swimming pool. In this sentence, we know exactly who we're talking about because I give the name. So my friend Lisa. So I don't need any more information in order to know who I'm talking about. But I can give you more information. I can choose to give you more information. I don't have to. It's not required. It doesn't define who Lisa is, but I can tell you more about her. So for example, I could say, my friend Lisa, who is on the swim team, loves the new swimming pool. In this case, you can see here, who is on the swim team is a group of words. We can see that it has the verb is. It has a subject, which is the relative pronoun who. So a group of words with a subject and a verb. So it is a clause. It begins with the relative pronoun, so we know it's a relative clause. It's coming after a noun, so we know that it's giving us more information about my friend Lisa. My friend Lisa, who is on the swim team, loves the new swimming pool. But I want you to notice two things about this sentence. First, listen to how I say it. I say, I'm going to read it two ways. Here's the first way. My friend Lisa, who is on the swim team, loves the swimming pool. Here's the second way. My friend Lisa, who is on the swim team, loves the new swimming pool. The second way is correct. Did you hear that I paused at this comma and I paused at this comma? And you see a difference between this one had no commas, and this one does. Now, the only difference between these two sentences is that for this one, we really don't need to know that Lisa is on the swim team in order to know who she is. If I were to get rid of that clause and just say, my friend Lisa loves the new swimming pool, that makes sense. We're not confused. We know who we're talking about. We don't need to know this information about Lisa. So for this relative clause, we say the relative clause is not defining who Lisa is. It's not required information. The sentence makes sense without it. When we want to stick something into the middle of the sentence, especially in between the subject and the verb, and we don't need it, then we want to put a comma before it and after it. And the comma at the beginning and at the end of this clause tells us that we can take that clause right out of the sentence and the sentence will still make sense. So here is our independent clause, subject, verb. If you see a sentence that has this relative pronoun here, who, and a verb, a clause, who is on the swim team, and you see a comma before it and a comma after it, that means that that relative clause is giving us more information about the subject, about Lisa, but we don't need to have it in the sentence. You could just take it right out. So if you're trying to decide what the verb is for Lisa, right, we have to have subject, verb, then we want to just cover this up for a minute, and that will help us find the subject and the verb that goes with it. So my friend Lisa loves. So in this sentence, my friend Lisa, who is on the swim team, loves the new swimming pool. Who is on the swim team is a kind of relative clause called a non-defining relative clause. There are some slightly different rules for this type of relative clause. Number one, we put a comma before it and a comma after it. And that tells the reader that that relative clause is not necessary information. And we can take it right out of the sentence, and the sentence would still make sense. We would not be confused about who it is that loves the new swimming pool. One other rule about a non-defining relative clause is that we cannot replace who with that. We cannot say, my friend Lisa, that is on the swim team. Okay, we have to just only use, if it's a person, just use who. My friend Lisa, who is on the swim team, loves the new swimming pool. The other thing about a non-defining relative clause is we cannot just skip that relative pronoun. We cannot leave it out. We cannot say, my friend Lisa is on the swim team, loves the new swimming pool. So if we have a non-defining relative clause, which means it's extra information that we don't need to know in order to understand who this is, we have to have the relative pronoun written down or said. We cannot substitute it with that. We will have a comma before it and after it. So when we are speaking, we will pause here and we will pause here. When we compare that to the relative clause that we really do need to know, it really does give us important information. We call that a defining relative clause. A defining relative clause does not use commas before it or after it. With a defining relative clause, we can use that. So we could say, my friend that likes swimming loves the new swimming pool. My friend that likes swimming loves the new swimming pool. So we could use that. Let me get rid of that for a minute. So this is a look at a defining relative clause and at a non-defining relative clause. The non-defining has the commas before and after it. The defining does not have commas before and after it because it's important information. Let's look for a minute at relative clauses that begin with the relative pronoun which. This would be giving more information about a thing or an animal. So let's look at our first example here. You can see I have my phone seems old. The phone seems old. Okay, so we're starting with our independent clause. My phone seems old. Here's my subject and my verb and an adjective. So this is subject, verb, adjective kind of sentence. My phone seems old. Well, actually, I know which phone I'm talking about because I say my. My phone seems old. So I don't really need to give you any more information about which phone I'm talking about because I tell you it's my phone. If I give you more information, that's extra. So for example, if I put this right here, my phone, which I bought last year, I don't need to know this in order to know what phone I'm talking about because I only have one phone. So this is extra information. And because it's extra information, that relative clause is non-defining. It's extra. So I will use commas before it and after it. And the commas tell us that I could take that clause right out and my sentence will still make sense. My phone seems old. You will still know what phone I am talking about. So that is a non-defining relative clause. We don't need it. Extra information. We put the comma before and after it. Again, we cannot use that if we are using commas, okay? So it would just be my phone, which I bought last year, seems old. Let's look at this sentence. The phone seems old. Well, because I use the word the, I don't know which phone I'm talking about. I want more information. Okay, I'm not clear. So it's more important here to say the phone which I bought last year seems old. The only difference between this sentence and this sentence is this one begins with my and this one begins with the. My is much more specific. It tells me which phone I'm talking about. And that's enough to make this unnecessary. The does not tell me if I'm talking about my phone or some other phone. So this is more important. Now the relative clause is defining. So I do not want to use the commas because I don't want to take it out. I want to include it. It's important. It's essential. It helps the reader or the listener know which phone I'm talking about. So if I do that, then I can replace which with that. I could say the phone that I bought last year. So you'll notice with this word that, it can replace who and it can replace which, but only if it is a defining relative clause. That means we are not using the commas. If we're using commas because we don't need that information, then we're going to stick with who if it's about a person and which if it's about a thing. But I want to show you here something different in this relative clause from the one on this page. When we looked here at who is and who likes, in these relative clauses, we find the verb and the relative pronoun is being the subject for that verb. Here's the verb and the relative pronoun is being the subject for that verb. But look at these relative clauses. Let's find the verb, okay, bought. Well, who's the subject that goes with bought? Okay, who bought last year? The subject is not which, it is I. So here is the subject and the verb inside the relative clause. So here's my relative clause inside the light purple rectangle. Here's my verb and my subject. In this relative clause, the relative pronoun is not being the subject of the verb. In this type of relative clause, we say that the relative pronoun is being the object of the relative clause. Let's take a look at what I mean by that. That seems kind of confusing. How can the relative pronoun be both the subject or the object if it's the first word in the clause? It makes sense for it to be the subject if it comes right before the verb. But what if it's first and then there's a subject after it and then a verb? What do I mean when I say this is the object? Well, let's look for a minute at subject, verb, object. So if we look down here, I want you to remember that I use red for my subject, green for my verb, and orange for my object. So we have learned that one type of sentence is a subject, verb, object. Who or what it is about, what they're doing. And then this would answer the question, what? With a subject, verb, object, the subject is the one doing the action, the verb, and the object is what the action is being done to. So let's see, in our sentence, the example is, I bought a phone. So here, the subject is I. What did I do? Bought. Bought what? I did what? Bought. I bought what? A phone. So in this sentence, the subject is I, the verb is bought, and a phone is an object. You can see that I is a person, phone is a thing, so those are nouns or pronouns in the sentence. The one doing the action is the subject. The other noun is the object. The object is not the one doing the action. The phone is not buying me. I am the one buying the phone. So the phone is the object. In this sentence here, my phone, which I bought last year, well, the phone is not doing the buying. So this relative clause is a group of words telling us which phone are we talking about. So it's giving us more information about the phone. It's answering the question, which one? Which phone? So it is talking about the phone, but it is not the phone that is buying something. So in this clause, the subject for bought is I. I bought. I bought what? The phone. So if I bought the phone is the object of what I bought. And this word which is talking about the phone. So here, which is the object for this clause. It's acting as the object because I bought what? I bought the phone. Phone is the object of what I bought. This is different from when we have my friend who likes swimming. Here, who is talking about my friend. We could take my friend and put it in this red box. My friend likes swimming. So who is the subject of likes swimming because this who is talking about my friend. My friend likes swimming. So here it's the subject. But you cannot take my phone and say, my phone bought last year. So in this sentence, which is not the subject of bought. It's talking about phone, and phone is the object of what I bought. So who, which, and that are pronouns. We know that pronouns take the place of a noun. And we know that in a sentence, a noun can be a subject of the sentence or an object of the sentence. So in the relative clause, these three pronouns can act like the subject of the clause, or they can be an object of the clause. These three words will most of the time be written down, and that makes it easy to find the clause. But sometimes they do not have to be written down, and that's a little bit trickier. So we will talk about that also. So we have learned that a relative pronoun, like which or who, can either be the subject of the clause or an object of the clause. The way to see if the relative pronoun is acting as the subject of the clause or an object in the clause is to look at the noun that the clause is giving us more information about and see what would happen if we replaced the relative pronoun with the noun that it's telling us about. For example, this relative pronoun which is taking the place of phone. It's telling us about the phone. So if we took this word, the phone, and replaced which, put it right in front of the verb, would that make sense? The phone bought last year. That's what it would sound like if the phone was the subject of that clause. The phone bought last year. The phone is not going to buy anything. So this does not make sense. So in this sentence, the phone which I bought last year, the phone is not the subject of this clause. We would not say the phone bought anything. That means which in this sentence cannot be the subject of this clause. The phone is what I bought. Okay, I bought the phone. So the phone is the object of this clause, and which is the pronoun taking the place of the phone. So which is the object in this clause. In this one down here, who is the relative pronoun taking the place of my friend. It's telling us about my friend. If I take this and put it as the subject in that sentence, my friend likes swimming, that makes sense. And so in this case, who is the subject of this clause. So again, a little trick you can do to find out if which is an object or a subject, and if who is an object or a subject, because both of them can be either one. So you take the word, the noun that the pronoun is replacing, that it's telling you about, and you see if you can make it the subject and see if it makes sense. The phone bought last year, that doesn't make sense. It's not the phone doing the buying. It's I bought. I bought what? I bought the phone. So the phone is being the object of that clause. So which is a relative pronoun acting as the object. With this one, my friend likes swimming. That makes sense. So here, who, which means my friend, is the subject. It's the subject right before the verb. If this is the subject, you cannot get rid of it. If it is the object, you can get rid of it if it is a defining clause. So actually we could say, the phone I bought last year seems old. You could do that. But what you mean is the phone which I bought, or the phone that I bought last year seems old.